Right. So when the airspeed is below 60 knots, the stall warning goes away, as this lady pointed out. So the stall warning horn was going on and going off. They were ignoring it either way. So it's a little bit not germane, but I mean there were some reports in the press saying, well, maybe they didn't realize they were stalled because the stall warning horn had stopped blaring. In my humble opinion, it's by that point they were sort of cognitively out of control. So now they're descending at about a 40-degree angle, and Bonin, at any rate, he takes back control of the airplane, and he does a bunch of different control inputs. One of the things I should mention is that there was some speculation after the final report came out that the flight director was kind of coming and going out, and it was, giving all kinds of crazy indications. At one point, it was indicating that the pilot should actually pull up, even though they were already stalled. So obviously, this was very bad advice from the flight director. Again, we don't know if he was looking at the flight director. He doesn't mention it. If you look at the graph of where the flight director was and where the controls were, they're sort of all over the place. So it's ambiguous. It would be unfortunate. So the pilot, so soon after, sort of at the end of this sequence, so now we're about like a minute and a half in, the pilot, the captain comes back and he says, "What the hell are you doing?" And Bonin says, I've lost control. I have no control. And Robert says, we have no idea what's happening. We've tried everything. Nothing works. We've tried everything. Of course, they haven't really tried anything. They haven't done a single checklist. And they certainly haven't done anything in an organized way. But this is the state, this is incipient panic or full-blown panic, whatever you want to call it. They have cognitively been channeled into this narrow funnel where they're unable to really think things through clearly. They're in a state of high emotional arousal. They're basically just help. And so after frantically pushing the button to summon the captain to come back, after a minute and a half, he finally comes back. He says, "What are you doing?" "We don't know." And by this point, they're in essentially a stable configuration because they're descending at 10,000 feet per minute. They're in a right bank, and they're just going to hold that. They're not going to do anything at all. A few minor things, but nothing significant. So the captain is back, and he, obviously there's too much chaos going on. If he had taken over, the seat of Bonin, probably I imagine this would have just been resolved very quickly. But he didn't know what Bonin was doing. And so they're looking at this situation, and it's absolutely baffling to them. It's especially baffling given the limitations on their cognitive resources due to the emotional stress. So they cannot figure out how 1 and 1 equals 2. They've got full engine power. They're not able to understand, why are we descending at this incredible rate? Should we even believe that we're descending at this incredible rate? When you're descending at a steady rate, I've had a lot of people complain to me about this on the internet. But it is a fact. I think Einstein spent a lot of time talking about this. If you're on an elevator that's descending at a steady rate of speed, it feels like you're standing still. I mean, this is part of the disorientation that pilots can get into if they're in true instrument conditions. They don't even know if they're going down. I mean, the vertical speed indicator says so, but who knows? Now, part of the reason, this is a really critical thing that people have talked a fair bit about. So unlike a Boeing, and anybody who's, if I say something dramatically erroneous about Airbuses and you know differently, feel free to let me know. But my understanding of it is that you've got these side stick controllers, unlike a yoke type control of a Boeing or like a Cessna that I'm familiar with. You've got this little joystick on the side. And it's all the way over on the side, and just takes slight motions to make a pretty dramatic command. If you're behind or to the side, it's a little bit hard. It's not incredibly obvious what that person is doing. And so I don't think that either of the other pilots understood that Bonin had the stick all the way back. And And if you come into it from a mindset of course, if you're getting a stall horn, you don't pull the stick back. If it would never occur to you that a person who's employed by an airline to fly a plane would ever do something like this, it just enters into your equation. I don't think they would think, well, maybe this would make sense if one of us was pulling back on the stick. This kind of control is called asynchronous, meaning that what one does, what you do on one stick doesn't have any bearing on what the person with the other stick feels. So it's not like a mechanical linkage that I have in my Cessna 150 where I pull back and the other one physically pulls back. There's no way to mistake what the other person's doing. You know, if I'm a student pilot and I'm yanking back on the yoke, my instructor in the left seat knows exactly what I'm doing, or vice versa. Sorry about that. So this lack of information, this crucial, critical, piece of information that you cannot ignore, you can't ignore it if someone's pulling a yoke back into your chest, is missing in the situation. And this becomes, obviously, a point of discussion afterwards. So now the plane is back. It's back to its original altitude. This time, however, it's falling rapidly. Its nose is pitched up 15 degrees. It's got a forward speed of about 100 knots. It's descending at 10,000 feet per minute, an angle of attack of 41.5 degrees. And it will maintain this all the way down. Like I said, it's like an elevator going down towards the ocean. And as was discussed earlier, the airspeed is so low that the stall warning turns off. So that's off the table. Now, Robert, desperate to turn to the authority of the captain, the person who's legally responsible for the safety of the airplane and the passengers and the crew. What do you think about it? What do you think? What do we need to do? And Dubois says, I don't know. It's going down. And this is like brain freeze. And I've been in this situation in a plane, my badly piloted Cessna that I'm flying around in, and I screw up, and all of a sudden I'm like, what? I don't know. I can't think it out. And given that Dubois is missing one crucial piece of information, it's impossible for him to figure it out under these conditions. So, out of frustration, Robert, this is about 3.5 minutes in, Robert just shouts at him, climb, 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 make it stop doing this. Bonin protests, but I've had the stick back the whole time. Why isn't it climbing? I told the plane to climb. But finally, he's let slip the clue. He's let out his secret. And the captain says, no, 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 no. Don't climb. No, no. And I think the penny drops. This is kind of a tragic moment because finally they realize what's happened. They've been held in the stall by Bonin. Robert says, all right, give me the controls. Descend, give me the controls. And he does. Bonin gives up the controls. Robert puts the nose down. They start to gain speed, but it's too late. They're now at 2,000 feet. The aircraft sensors detect the fast approaching surface, so you get more alarms. It's too late. There's no time. Even if you put the nose all the way down, it's not going to gain you the airspeed you need in time. And at any rate, without warning his colleagues, Bonin takes the stick back and he pulls back. So one last shot. Finally, Robert, with just seconds to go, he says, damn it, we're going to crash. This can't be happening. And this is a phenomenon that's common in intensely stressful situations. There's this kind of disassociation that takes place. It doesn't seem real. How can this be happening? 5 minutes ago, we were chatting and having a good time, and now we're about to hit the ocean. It's impossible. Bonin, what's happening? Captain says 10 degrees of pitch. It's very interesting to contrast these reactions. These men are literally at the end of their lives. This is the final seconds of their lives. One is in denial. One is confused. The captain says 10 degrees of pitch. He's still trying to figure it out. But 1.4 seconds later, the cockpit voice recorder stops. And that's the end of Air France 447. And kind of ironically, because they were just at the edge of Brazilian airspace, they were about to depart across the Dakar flight information region, 3 hours of position known only to ADS-C, which they actually had failed to log into. It was like a convergence of unfortunate circumstances that it will take 3 more hours for anyone to figure out that this has happened. And so you've got this huge zone of uncertainty as to where did this plane go down. Now, as it happened, there's another system that I haven't mentioned yet called ACARS, which is a way that the plane can automatically communicate with the ground. And so this information was being fed to Air France's maintenance headquarters near Paris. It was transmitting every so often. It would transmit its position, and then if anything happened that would be of interest to maintenance personnel, it would transmit that as well. And so here, just around the time actually that the autopilot turns off, just a few seconds before it transmits its position. These two views, one is top down, the one above is a top down, and the other one is kind of at an angle, so if you can sort of imagine it, you're looking at sort of a 3D view. So here, this is Bonat hand flying the plane, going up, and then losing its airspeed, stalling it, entering into that unrecoverable right bank, and just riding it all the way down. Here's from the other angle, climbing, and then stalling and riding it down like this. And so, meanwhile, some hours go by, worry starts to build up on the ground. Where is this plane? And so they start to look at these ACARS transmissions that were received in the middle of the night. And they start here, and they go till about here, and then they stop. And they report various things about pitot tubes and autopilots and auto thrust turning off. And for 2 years, that's all that they had to go by. But working backwards from this last ACARS position, they were able to generate a theory about where the wreckage might have landed. You know, they didn't know anything that happened beyond this point. I mean, they knew that they had lost airspeed indication and so forth. They didn't have any position information, so they didn't know if they went straight or if they went backwards. So they had a big margin of uncertainty somewhere around here, and they started searching. And it took 2 years, and they had to introduce a whole new kind of technology in order to find it. But that was the end of it. And so it became a very mysterious accident and a very significant accident, because why should this plane have been lost? What was the magnitude of the problem that led to 228 people losing their lives? Okay, some of the factors were kind of immediately obvious. I mean, even before they found the debris.